Hello, I'm Sacco, and welcome back to another Mechabellum Replay review. Starting off with the starting specialists, it looks like I have a Rhino specialist or Farseer specialist. I prioritize the starting. I prioritize the specialist over the unit drops or the unit combinations. So both of these are honestly quite pickable. And honestly, I think SaraTzch is a little bit overrated at the moment. People think it's like a must pick no matter what it comes with, but SaraTzch really just doesn't have that many. Like, SaraTzch has one hard winning matchup, which is the Spider, and it has like two hard losing matchups, like the Steel Balls and the Stormcallers. So I don't think it's that, like, it's a good opener. It's not like bad like a Mustang opener, but I think it's a little bit overrated. So I mean, it's still pickable right there, and it came with a good specialist, but I do like the Sledge Arc package. Is very strong and has less downside in my opinion. So my opponent, who I don't know how you say this guy's name, but he's rated 2.1k MMR. Looks like he just slammed his head on the keyboard for his username, but he's Speed Specialist with Tarantula Marksman, which is a quite spicy opener if you ask me. And now I'm Sledge Arc, so usually I like to push. I usually prioritize asymmetrical aggro, but when it comes to headbutting spiders, if I asym push on one side, he will have the advantage because he's speed, but also because he's tarantula. And if I headbutt him like in front of him, if I place my units on the line in front of the tarantula, I will be at a disadvantage since Spider HE is really strong and it's better trafficker than the Arclight. So I usually like to just play to my strengths of my opening packs and deploy defensively here. I like to go for a center pull, which is basically designed in a way where I utilize all of my units. Well, I mean, I say that, and then this guy walks to Narnia, but he also just has a really, like, far off, like, positioning here where none of these units really pull. But generally, it's a lot easier when you have chaff involved as well. But the theory behind a center pull is you activate all your units instead of half your army pushing to one tower here. And round one, I needed DPS, so I have to go with Marksman. I really don't have any other option. Like, I could buy 2 chaff and like get Phoenixes round 2 for DPS, but I like to like make sure the Tarantula gets as little XP as possible and get the Marksman scaling. So of course, into the Marksman, I definitely need to get some chaff in front of these sledges here to buy me more time. Now, I usually take like every spell in the game since spells are so good, and against an aggro player, he's very vulnerable to it, so it's good to try to utilize it. I'm also very vulnerable to the underground threat, so I have to basically spend my entire turn playing around it. Now, taking the unit drop, or taking the underground threat, leaves me with 350 supplies, which is enough to get triple deploys with a $100 cost. So I'm just going to deploy some crawlers. Ideally, I wanted fangs actually up front, and it funnels chaff better, but of course I have to defend underground threat, so 2 late crawlers in the back on top of a crawler on the left to pull a big portion of his army. Just since he's speed specialist and he's asym pushing, this just basically softens the aggression, and it honestly is going to pull so much chaff here. I was surprised it pulled that much. I only wanted to pull like half his army, but I literally pulled every single bit of his army except this one guy. Poor Marksman just gets blasted. He's just so fast. Like, B-Spec is a bit scary, or can be scary, but unfortunately his crawler gets through. I didn't really defend it fully. I just stalled and hoped that my underground threat went through, but he just has so much chaff in the back, and he fortified a tower that ended up being better for him, but not that big a deal. Spiders didn't level yet, so not much to worry about yet. Still quite a bit of damage for round 2, but what are you gonna do? All right, the drops are here. I could take anything right now. Scorpions is good for dealing with the spiders. Farseer is decent at dealing with the spiders since it's round 2, or It's an early drop, and Farseer is usually good into everything. But generally how I like to approach these ASIM pushes, I start off with a center pull, but honestly, if you're going to leave your tower wide open like this, I'm just going to go punish it. And that's why I went for the steel balls. The steel balls beat the rhinos in case you take the rhinos, and also allows me to kill the fortified tower pretty fast. Now I go for a little annoying crawler beacon just to stall as much of this garbage as possible. And then I actually unlock a Wraith to assist the steel balls. Wraith is one of the best chaff clears in the game if you have the support for it. And honestly, I haven't been playing too much Wraith myself, but I've been seeing a lot of Sarah, who is like one of the best aggro players. And I think recently he touched like #1 MMR in the world. And he was doing this like Wraith HE, like high explosive ammo Wraiths with Phoenixes and Charge Shot behind it. So I wanted to like test that out, and it felt like this was like a good opportunity to do so, because like the Wraiths pair really well with the steel balls. The steel balls tank for the Wraith, and they allow me to get this tower here. Again, I wanted some fangs to chaff for the sledges, but I unlocked the Wraith, so I didn't have time to deploy the fang. And as you can see, that beacon crawler stuff is just so annoying. Like, he even clicked temp speed, and he is speed specialist, and it still pulls like a big portion of his army here. And since like I was given the steel balls, I can use the steel balls with this aggression as a way to like deal with the tarantulas in the end game. Like, marksman can do a decent job, of course. I mean, balls aren't really that reliable also, but the way I'm set up, as long as I get good tower timings and good tower pressure, the balls should be able to be my DPS. And we get the magic rhino from the sky, so it can't go wrong with that. Now, deployment module with the rhino is very interesting, but a level 2 steel ball with super heavy armor, which has basically like what, 90k HP on a round 4 ball. So it's just so insane. It's very hard to deal with outside of like multi-melters, right? So I end up prioritizing that over the deployment module. Now he has to defend the tower. So now it's just, this game is just all about like who gets the better tower timing. And it basically stops a lot of his aggression since he has to actually defend a push. So with tower oil fortifications, this is stable. Like, Sledge Arc is just such a good like comp at slowing down. And then during debuff, the marksman can actually close out here. So he actually does a similar crawler that I'm doing to him. Unfortunately, I need the beacon for my main push because I want to make sure I get the second tower, so I just let that be. And conveniently, I kind of ignore this crawler pull, so this should be a really good turn. He has no real answer for the super heavy armor balls, and I am pulling his main DPS dealer on this side with the crawler. You always got to be careful when defending pushes to like don't position your garbage over here, because it leaves you very weak or vulnerable to pulls, right? Like, I pull this crawler, I pull 2 crawlers and a steel ball, and just with a crawler pack. Now he's got a little flank going on over here with the redeployment, which should eventually get my tower, but since I am steel ball Wraith, I should have more tower pressure than he. Like, he is speed specialist, but he is in tarantula, and balls are just faster, right? So it's very good unit for pushing, and a very good unit for these type of games where we're like, he's pushing my tower, I'm pushing his tower type of scenario. Now, the deployment module is very annoying to deal with because he can just deploy it to both flanks, and I basically have to cover all angles. But usually one of the best ways to deal with most flanks in the game, honestly, is a Wasp. Wasp is very good into the marksman to chaff for the Wraith, but also it just like handles other Wasp flanks, other Phoenix flanks, and whatever garbage he wants to put on the flank. It even clears chaff at a semi-decent rate, so Wasp is usually my go-to. Now my opponent goes for the Raiden, which is, in theory, I'm very vulnerable to because I got Steel Balls and Wraith. But honestly, I think Raiden is just an underwhelming unit. Like, even into comms that it should be good against, like, tempo-wise, I feel like you can just steamroll still. I don't know. Like, of course, I have a suit, like a level 2 ball with super heavy armor and a Rhino with nano. That probably helps more, but I was very curious to see how this ball Wraith comp goes against Raiden. So we'll have to see. And the beacon is just so good. Like, he has no real way to kill the level 2 Rhino. It's going to be level 3 now with nano. Like, nano on a as Rhino spec is, I wonder what like the win rate of that is, that combination. It's just so nasty and creates just a big threat to deal with. Another heavy armor, like, come on. But I prioritize the enhancement module. Econ is very important. And I have some dead units on the board that I can get rid of here, so I take that. Now my answer to the Raiden is the Charge Shot Phoenix. Just an efficient, one of the best DPS techs in the game, I would say. And it's very cheap on an already good unit with good DPS. And it is kind of hard to Fortress Anti-Air Phoenixes when you have Wraiths on the board, because the Fortress Anti-Air will hit the Wraiths and then your Phoenixes are safe. So that's kind of the build I wanted to try out that I saw from Sarah. Now I go for Underground Threat with Drill just to make sure my Crawler duel is better than his. And the oil seems to be doing a lot of work for him. And him getting my second tower allows him to deal with the rest of my unit. So the oil just very hard to deal with here. And he gets better tower timing, so we have to work on that. Usually how I like to deal with oil is just beacon away from oil for a turn, because there's not much you can do. Like, the Wraiths go in front of the balls. Your Crawlers take forever to go over the oil. He clears all the chaff. It's just such a nightmare here. So I stonk the Wraith just for the monies. And I take the Phantom Rays into the Raiden, which, like, conceptually doesn't make sense. But it's not like his level 1 Raidens can one-shot these anyways. And I was already selling out of units, so I just took something I can just take and have on the board, since I have no room to sell. And then I do, like, this beacon play. And this is, like, one of the first times I click high explosive ammo on the Wraiths, just because he has so much chaff. And honestly, this might be like the best chaff player in the game at the moment if you can set it up. Like, 15-meter splash is quite insane here. Now I got a nice sledge pull going on. We'll see how that goes. I think sledge pulls also are just nasty. Like the beautiful thing about the Crawler pull is it, like, all his units have to turn to kill the Crawler. And then the way how targeting works is units prioritize where they're looking at. I think in like a 30-degree angle or so. I don't know the technicalities, okay? But basically, where it prioritizes units outside of its range, what it's looking at, right? So this sledge pull, literally, like, all the units look at the Crawler, they kill the Crawler, and then they have to go all the way to the back flank to kill the sledge. And that basically enables my comp to get in. Now, this move allowed me to not die here, because I think if I were to try to push through the oil, it'll be pretty difficult, especially with the Raidens now getting online. But good thing I have the level 3 nano Rhino basically carrying my ass. He just can't kill it. But good thing we don't die here. Now, power system is just so nasty. Like, power system plus temp speed is an additional 6 meters of speed. Now my Wraith is at 60 meters a second and my balls are at 22. So these things are just getting in. Now we've got really good chaff clear, we have really good DPS for the sky, and now we have the item scaling with the armor enhancement. So, and on top of having like super heavy armor balls, so it seems like should be in a really good spot here. Now I don't want to go back to pressure this tower. The oil's gone. We can just like stack all the resources on one side and try to go from there. We have the Charge Shot Phoenixes going. We have the HE Wraiths going. We have good chaff clear, good DPS. How can we lose? Of course, we stonked the sledges, and now we have it on the Wasp, but Add an additional sledge just to make sure there's more stall going on and keep them occupied, but maybe not the smartest move into the Raidens, since the Raidens are really efficient at dealing with sledges. But this Rhino just refuses to die, and the charge shot Phoenixes allow me to close out here. Now, it is getting a little bit sketchy with charge shot without range, since they are running in and basically getting chained by the Raiden, so I do have to look into investing into range just to stay behind the Wraiths. Alright, more unit drops. Now, I suspected, since I clicked armor, he would go EMP on his Raidens. It just makes sense. So that's why I went for the preemptive Photon. And I mean, Photon's really good, insane with the armor enhancement Nano Rhino and the steel balls, of course. But on top of that, it counters the EMPs, which is what he clicks this turn here. I got the range on the Phoenixes now, so that they should be behind the Wraiths. I got like a tanky army. I'm immune to EMP. So now it just comes down to good tower timings and can I kill the Raidens. We got the fortification to level 3 now and the tower oil, so this should stuff any type of push and make sure we have the advantage in the late game. Now again, he missiles the Rhino, but he just doesn't have the DPS. He has ranged balls, but they just never connect because he never positioned that optimally here. And with all these charge shot Phoenixes behind it, honestly, like, how do you actually kill the Rhino? Like, there's only 2 ways to kill Rhinos, really. It's like melters. Well, there's war factories, but that's a different problem. But like melters generally and balls. And with the HE Wraiths, all the chaff is dead, and that leaves room for the charge shot Phoenixes to do a lot of work here. Now, orbital bombardment, kind of brutal for me, but I do run the sneaky tech. I just put it on the bar. Quantum reassembly. After 12 seconds, I get my birds back. So I think it's really cheap, right? Only 150 plus the tech price. So I get to have my birds back. So that's got to be good. So first time clicking it, and it should be good, right? Because if he kills my birds, I get them back, and then I got range on the balls now to make sure we deal with the fortified tower a little bit faster, just to connect earlier also onto the spiders. The oil is back though, but most of my army is stacked on one side, so we'll eventually push through it. Fortified this tower as well in case there's like a second tower debuff, and that should minimize any like crawlers or whatever from getting in. Of course, the underground threat does a lot in pulling some of his army behind. And the Rhino just refuses to die to the steel balls with the beacon. And the charge shot Phoenixes clean up everything else here. Bit of a crazy game. Now that is definitely one way to defend a push, which is you just push yourself, right? Like, I don't know. I usually like this type of playstyle because I like to be like causing the problems and not being reactive. Like, I do like to be reactive because it allows you to be greedy econ wise and set up an optimal board to counter theirs late game. But also I like not waiting a round and letting the aggro player dictate the pace. And if you're handed 2 steel balls, I mean, why not pressure the weak side tower? I think that's one thing I see a lot of defenders don't really utilize that well, is they just kind of, like, there's different types of risk assessment and different ways to play it, but a lot of defenders just sit back, relax, and just like wait for the aggro player to do everything to them. But when you deploy asymmetrically on one side, you're very vulnerable to your weak side tower, of course, right? That's why people fortify towers and all that. So causing problems forces the aggro player to have to defend you, which means they can't just stack more of their garbage on one side and overwhelm you, right? And we end up actually just selling out. Like, looking at the late end game board state, it looks like we were the aggro players from the beginning. And I would say this is actually, it seems like it's a promising composition, right? Like, assuming you have time to set it up, Wraiths with HE, which is like 50-meter splash, which is insane, with one of the highest DPS in the game, with charge shot, which like multiplies that even more. It seems like it's a pretty tough comp to deal with, and it's very like tempo heavy, right? Like the Phoenixes get online immediately. Wraith really just need range to get going initially, and then of course I get some items and enhancement module to scale. So I think that was an interesting defense / aggro game. Thanks for watching.